Lyra Vance stood at the edge of the Academy's great training hall, her boots echoing on the polished metallic floor. She had walked past this hall hundreds of times during orientation. But today felt different. Today she would be tested. Today the Academy would see if a human could match the strength and skill of beings who had evolved on worlds far harsher than Earth. She clenched her fists, feeling the subtle hum of her own energy. It was strange, really, how small adjustments in stance, in breath, could make a human capable of feats that some of the larger alien cadets found impossible. The hall was massive. Sunlight filtered through the artificial skylights, casting long beams over the rows of combat dummies, weapons racks, and practice arenas. Floating displays showed cadet scores, mission updates, and messages from instructors orbiting around the hall like small satellites. Lyra's eyes scanned the crowd of students and instructors gathered along the edges. Aliens of all shapes and sizes, some with 4 arms, some covered in scales, others entirely composed of a translucent fluid, watched her. Most of their expressions were the same: curiosity, amusement, and something darker, something that whispered doubt. "You really think a human can do this?" A tall, blue-skinned cadet whispered to his companion, his 4 arms folded, each one flexing subtly, a silent demonstration of his species' natural power. "They might surprise you," the companion replied, though her tone carried little conviction. She, too, was not human. Lyra ignored the murmurs. She had heard such skepticism her entire life. On Earth, humans were always underestimated. On her first day at the Academy, an alien instructor had casually remarked that humans were fragile creatures with sharp minds and weak muscles. Lyra remembered the sting of those words, but she also remembered how much it fueled her. She had trained for years before even being accepted, not relying on technology, not depending on weapons, but mastering her own body, learning the subtle mechanics of leverage, balance, and strength. Her first memory of barehanded training was in her father's old dojo on Earth. While other kids played holo sports or flew racing drones, she learned to punch, to kick, to twist, and to fall without injury. Her father had taught her that every human move carried purpose. Every strike had a point. "Your body is your weapon, Lyra," he had said, his voice steady, almost harsh. "And strength is not just in muscles. It is in understanding what your opponent cannot see coming." She remembered falling many times, failing over and over. Each bruise had been a lesson. Each sore muscle a reminder that progress required persistence. Now, years later, standing in the Academy's hall, those lessons had shaped her. Humans were underestimated. Yes, but that underestimation was a weapon in itself. The training hall quieted as the instructors floated to the center, their robes glinting under the lights. One of them, an alien with reflective silver skin and no visible eyes, raised a hand, and a holographic interface appeared between them. A giant combat dummy materialized in the middle of the arena. Its size was formidable, nearly twice Lyra's height, reinforced with synthetic alloys, designed to resist high-impact strikes. The crowd murmured. Lyra approached. The dummy was heavy. Yes, but it was designed with joints, levers, and weak points. She knew that the Academy had intended this test to be nearly impossible for humans. They assumed no human could possibly break or disable it without advanced weaponry. That assumption, she thought, was her advantage. She stood before the dummy, flexing her fingers, feeling the tiny shiver of anticipation run through her arms. Around her, alien cadets whispered bets, some daring her to fail. Their confidence was easy to see. They assumed she lacked the raw strength, the advanced biology, to overpower their mechanical creation. Lyra bent her knees slightly, adjusting her balance, feeling the weight of her own center of gravity. Every movement she had learned, every hour of training spent punching against reinforced walls or practicing precision strikes, led to this moment. She focused, shutting out the whispers, the doubts, the eyes that watched her with skepticism. The instructor spoke. "Human cadet, proceed with the barehanded test." The words were simple, but the tone carried a challenge, an unspoken expectation that she would fail. Lyra nodded, taking a deep breath. She stepped forward, closing the distance between herself and the dummy. Her first strike was a simple punch, aimed at a joint near the dummy's shoulder. The metal groaned slightly, but it held. A small smile touched her lips. She had expected resistance. With a swift pivot of her body, she used the momentum to deliver a precise strike to another weak point, a hinge near the torso. The dummy rocked slightly, and the alien cadets in the crowd flinched. They had not expected her to move with such speed or precision. They had thought brute force was the only method, not technique. Lyra continued. Each punch, each elbow strike, each step was calculated. Her strikes hit with perfect timing, targeting joints, connectors, and weak alloys. The dummy shifted, staggered, but remained upright. Sweat formed along her brow, but her movements were smooth, controlled, almost fluid. The crowd leaned forward, intrigued despite themselves. The aliens whispered urgently. Some were starting to doubt their bets. Some were starting to feel the faintest twinge of respect. Lyra's focus did not waver. She was aware of their eyes. Yes, but they did not disturb her. She had trained herself to see only what mattered. Angles, leverage, and impact points. Her final strike was a combination of an uppercut and a twisting motion, a move she had practiced countless times against reinforced targets back on Earth. There was a sharp sound, metallic and resonant, and the dummy split along its midsection, breaking cleanly into two halves. Silence swept across the hall. Then, slowly, a murmur turned into cheers, and the human cadets near the edges of the hall erupted into applause. Lyra stepped back, breathing steadily, her chest heaving with exertion, but her expression calm. She had done it. She had broken the dummy. Not with raw strength alone, but with precision, technique, and human ingenuity. The alien instructors, once skeptical, now regarded her with new attention. The silver-skinned instructor floated forward, the holographic display flickering. "Remarkable," they said simply. Though the weight of the word carried more than it seemed, the human has demonstrated not only strength, but adaptability and precision beyond expectations. The alien cadets who had doubted her shuffled awkwardly, some muttering excuses, some staring openly at the broken dummy. Lyra ignored them. She knew their assumptions would take time to change. What mattered was what she had just proven. Humans were capable of more than anyone here believed. One of the human cadets ran forward, grinning, and clapped her on the shoulder. "That was amazing. I didn't think anyone could do it." Lyra smiled faintly, still catching her breath. "It's not about what anyone thinks. It's about knowing what you can do." As the crowd began to disperse, the instructors called the next cadets to the arena. Lyra stayed where she was for a moment, looking at the two halves of the dummy. She thought of her father's words. Of all the years of practice and discipline, humans were underestimated, yes, but in that moment, she felt the power of potential, the spark of possibility that no one else could see coming. She knew that this was only the beginning. The academy had seen her strength today, but challenges would come. And not all of them would be as simple as a dummy. There would be alien opponents, simulations, tests of endurance and strategy. Some would want to test whether her success had been a fluke. Some would want to see if humans could truly stand alongside the galaxy's strongest beings. Lyra adjusted her stance, feeling a familiar warmth in her muscles. She welcomed the thought of future challenges. They would push her, yes, but they would also prove that humans were more than capable of standing against the odds. In that vast hall, amidst the metallic floors and hovering lights, one human cadet had made a statement. One human had broken expectations. One human had shown that strength was not only measured in raw power, but in ingenuity, precision, and determination. Lyra Vance took a deep breath, and with it, the quiet confidence of someone who had just begun to show the galaxy what humans could really do. After her extraordinary success with the test dummy, Lyra Vance's reputation began to spread through the academy like wildfire. Whispers of her accomplishment reached every corridor, every training module, every cadet lounge. Humans had always been underestimated in combat, But Lyra's feat had proven that skill, strategy, and precision could outweigh brute strength or advanced biology. Despite the excitement, Lyra remained focused. She knew that admiration could be as dangerous as doubt. It drew attention, and not all attention was friendly. Alien cadets who had once laughed at her now watched with cautious curiosity. Some, however, were not willing to let a human cadet shine without challenge. "Think you can handle the advanced simulations tomorrow?" one of the larger alien cadets asked, his voice low and guarded. His arms were thick and strong, muscles visible even under his uniform. His species was known for raw power, capable of bending metals with their bare hands. Lyra nodded calmly. "I don't need to think. I'll handle it." The cadet smirked but did not push further. Words were one thing. Actions were another. He knew that underestimating her could cost him dearly. The following day, the Academy's Advanced Combat Simulation Hall was alive with energy. Holo projections of alien landscapes, asteroid fields, and abandoned space stations filled the arena. Each cadet was given a scenario designed to test reflexes, adaptability, and combat efficiency. For Lyra, these simulations were more than tests. They were opportunities to prove that humans could think and act faster than machines and creatures alike. Lyra approached her assigned simulation module, her heart steady, her senses sharp. The scenario projected before her was a derelict space station infested with robotic sentinels, designed to respond to any intruder with extreme force. The droids were fast, durable, and relentless. Many cadets had failed this simulation before. She took a deep breath and stepped into the projection. Instantly, she was surrounded by metallic walls, dim lighting, and the faint hum of machinery. The droids appeared, their glowing eyes scanning, their movements precise. Lyra knew that rushing in would be a mistake. Strength alone would not be enough. She needed strategy. She observed their patterns, noting the slight delay between each patrol, the timing of their attacks, the weaknesses in their armor plating. Then, she acted. Moving with a combination of agility and careful calculation, she dodged the first strike, used a counter to unbalance one of the droids, and sent it crashing into a wall. Another came at her with swinging arms, and she leapt, twisting mid-air, striking the precise joint in its leg that caused it to collapse. As she continued through the simulation, her body moved almost instinctively, each action flowing into the next. Cadets in the observation deck leaned forward, whispering in disbelief. Humans had always been seen as weaker, slower, less capable. Yet here was one human cadet navigating a deadly scenario with skill that rivaled even the most advanced alien trainees. Some aliens attempted to intimidate her further during breaks between simulations. They boasted about their species' natural advantages: enhanced reflexes, bone density, muscle mass. They suggested that no human could match them in real combat, that Lyra's success was a fluke reliant on predictable machines and dummies. Lyra listened, calmly and quietly. She did not argue, did not boast. She knew their confidence came from underestimating her again. Humans were clever, adaptable, and unpredictable. That was their edge. Every doubt cast at her, every insult thrown her way, only strengthened her resolve. Later in the day, the instructors announced a new challenge. A live combat scenario, where cadets would face off against hybrid creatures. Part organic, part mechanical, designed to simulate alien adversaries in the field. This test was meant to push cadets beyond their limits, to see who could remain calm under pressure and make critical decisions. Lyra entered the arena, her senses alert. The creatures emerged from the shadows, their movements fluid, their reactions swift. She adjusted her stance, relying on everything she had learned over years of training. She did not need weapons. Her fists, her feet, her understanding of leverage, and her timing were enough. The first creature lunged at her. She sidestepped, using its momentum against it, sending it crashing into a reinforced wall. The next one tried to flank her, and she anticipated its movement, delivering a precise strike that disrupted its balance. The creatures were relentless, but Lyra's strategy was impeccable. She conserved energy, avoided unnecessary risks, and used her environment to her advantage, knocking obstacles in the way of her attackers, forcing them into vulnerable positions. By the end of the simulation, the hybrid creatures were disabled, none seriously harmed, but each demonstrating the effectiveness of Lyra's combat approach. The crowd erupted into applause, and even the skeptical alien cadets exchanged glances, acknowledging for the first time that humans were not to be dismissed. After the exercise, Lyra walked toward the observation deck, where instructors evaluated her performance. The silver-skinned instructor from the dummy test floated down to meet her. "You continue to impress," they said. "Your approach is methodical, adaptive, and effective. It is rare to see a cadet, especially a human, manage these scenarios without relying on weaponry or enhancements." Lyra nodded, letting the compliment settle quietly. "I focus on what I can control," she replied. The instructor considered her words. "Indeed. That is a strength often overlooked. Other species rely on natural advantages. But humans have something unique. Innovation. Under pressure." Lyra's expression remained calm, but inside, a spark of satisfaction ignited. She had proven once again that human determination, skill, and ingenuity could stand shoulder to shoulder with beings designed by evolution to dominate physically. That evening, in the quiet of her quarters, Lyra reflected on the day's events. She reviewed the movements she had used in the simulations, noting areas for improvement. Even in success, she found lessons to learn. Every strike, every dodge, every calculated move had a purpose. She reminded herself that victory was not just about defeating the challenge, it was about growing stronger, sharper, better prepared for what lay ahead. Across the academy, whispers of her achievements spread among both human and alien cadets. Some humans looked at her with newfound respect and hope. Some aliens watched her warily, calculating how to adjust their own strategies if they were to face her in future challenges. Lyra understood that her actions were more than just personal victories, they were statements. They challenged assumptions about humans, about strength, and about what it meant to succeed in the galaxy. Over the next few days, Lyra faced a series of increasingly difficult scenarios. Each was designed to test endurance, reflexes, and creativity. Some required navigating complex terrain, others demanded quick thinking under pressure, and still others pushed her body to the limits with sustained combat against multiple opponents. In every scenario, Lyra relied on the same principles: careful observation, understanding weaknesses, conserving energy, and precise execution. Each success was a lesson for herself and a demonstration to the Academy that humans were more capable than anyone had believed. Her human classmates found inspiration in her determination. Cadets who had doubted their own abilities began to push themselves harder. Learning from Lyra's example, the Academy began to notice a subtle change. Where humans had once been passive observers or second-tier participants, they now displayed initiative and creativity. The atmosphere shifted slightly, a ripple effect of one cadet's persistence and courage. Alien cadets, while initially resistant, began to acknowledge her skills openly. Some still harbored doubts about humans in raw combat situations, but they could not ignore the evidence. Every simulation, every test, every challenge only reaffirmed the same truth. Lyra's success was no accident. Humans were underestimated, yes, but underestimated beings often had an edge the rest of the galaxy could not anticipate. One evening, after a particularly grueling simulation, Lyra sat quietly in the observation lounge, her body aching but her mind alert. She watched the stars through the massive windows of the orbital station. She thought about Earth, about her training, and about the challenges still ahead. Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new opponents, new tests, and new opportunities to demonstrate what humans could do. A fellow cadet, a young human named Kalen, approached her cautiously. "Lyra," he said, his voice hesitant, "how do you stay so focused? How do you keep going when the simulations get so intense?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I don't think about proving them wrong. I think about proving myself right." I focus on what I can do, on what I've trained for. Everything else is noise. Kaelin nodded, absorbing her words. I want to be that strong too. You will, Lyra said, placing a hand on his shoulder. It just takes patience, training, and believing that you're capable, even when no one else does. As the orbital station rotated slowly around a distant star, Lyra felt a quiet determination settle over her. She had faced machines, simulations, and skepticism, and she had emerged stronger every time. The Academy had begun to take notice. But there was still much to prove. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges far greater than dummies or robotic creatures. Yet Lyra was ready. She had trained her body, honed her mind, and embraced the human advantage, adaptability. She had learned that strength was not just physical, it was the courage to act, the creativity to improvise, and the confidence to stand tall when others doubted you. And standing tall, Lyra Vance knew, was exactly what humans were capable of. The days following her victory in the advanced simulations brought a new kind of attention for Lyra Vance. No longer was she merely the cadet who had snapped a test dummy in two. She had become a symbol of human potential. Cadets and instructors alike began to notice her movements, her strategy, her ability to read challenges before they happened. Yet with recognition came new pressure, and not all of it was friendly. Some of the alien cadets, who had once doubted her, now saw her as a threat. Subtle challenges emerged, from mockery veiled as conversation to direct attempts to provoke her during practice sessions. Lyra had learned to ignore most of it, but she knew she could not avoid conflict entirely. The Academy was a place of skill, and skill was tested through competition. One morning, as the cadets assembled for their routine drills, a tall, four-armed alien named Torek approached Lyra. His species was known for unmatched raw power, and his reputation at the Academy was formidable. You've done well, he said, his forearms flexing casually. But raw skill alone cannot carry you through every challenge. You rely too much on predictability. Lyra regarded him calmly. I rely on observation and adaptation. That is never predictable. Torek's expression shifted, a hint of irritation flashing across his features. We'll see how adaptable you are in the next test. The next test was a combat scenario designed to push cadets to the edge. A large arena had been prepared, filled with both mechanical and organic adversaries. The floor shifted, walls moved, and hazards appeared at random intervals. Cadets were required to navigate the environment while neutralizing threats, testing both physical skill and strategic thinking. Lyra entered the arena with her usual calm, noting the movements of the other cadets. Torek was there, alongside a team of his most skilled peers. They moved with confidence, their physical advantages clear, but Lyra understood that power was not the only measure of victory. Precision, timing, and creativity could overcome brute force. The first wave of adversaries appeared, hybrid creatures designed to test reaction speed. They were fast, coordinated, and aggressive. Lyra observed their patterns carefully, noting weak points and predicting attack sequences. When a creature lunged, she sidestepped, redirecting its momentum into a wall. Another tried to flank her, and she twisted her body, striking at a joint that caused it to collapse. The crowd of cadets watching from the observation deck murmured in surprise. Lyra moved with fluidity, her strikes calculated, her body responding instinctively to threats. Even the alien cadets were forced to acknowledge her skill, some exchanging glances of reluctant respect. As the scenario progressed, the arena itself became a challenge. Moving platforms, rising walls, and sudden obstacles required Lyra to adapt constantly. She ducked, rolled, and leapt, using her environment to her advantage. Where raw strength could not suffice, ingenuity and precision carried her forward. Torek attempted to confront her directly, leveraging his size and strength. Lyra anticipated his movements, countering with well-timed strikes and subtle shifts in position. Each contact with him tested her endurance, but she used his own power against him, redirecting force and exploiting openings. Slowly, she gained the upper hand, demonstrating not just skill, but the human ability to adapt under pressure. By the end of the simulation, Lyra had neutralized every adversary and navigated the challenges of the shifting arena. Torek, breathing heavily, regarded her with a mixture of astonishment and respect. The other alien cadets were quieter than usual, their earlier confidence tempered by her performance. After the exercise, instructors evaluated the results. Lyra's score was the highest among all cadets, not only because of her efficiency, but because of her strategy and adaptability. The silver-skinned instructor approached her, speaking in a tone that carried genuine admiration. "You have surpassed expectations once again," they said. "Your performance demonstrates that human skill, when combined with observation and ingenuity, can exceed even the advantages of natural strength." Lyra nodded, acknowledging the compliment without arrogance. "I train to understand, not to prove." Her calm composure was a quiet statement in itself. Humans were often underestimated because they did not appear threatening at first glance. But Lyra had shown that underestimating them could be a critical mistake. Over the following weeks, Lyra faced increasingly complex challenges. Some scenarios were individual, testing her skill and endurance. Others were team-based, requiring cooperation and coordination. In every case, she relied on her principles: observe, adapt, and execute with precision. Each challenge honed her abilities further, and her confidence grew alongside her reputation. Her influence extended beyond personal success. Other human cadets began to emulate her approach. Training with renewed determination, they focused on observation, on using their minds as well as their bodies, and on finding creative solutions to challenges. Slowly, a shift occurred within the human contingent of the Academy. Where humans had once been overlooked, they now demonstrated potential and resilience. Lyra also learned from her alien peers. Some, like Torek, pushed her to test her limits. Others shared strategies and insights, creating a mutual respect that transcended species boundaries. She recognized that strength came not from isolation but from understanding and adapting to diverse approaches. Despite her growing reputation, Lyra remained grounded. She trained diligently, reflecting on every success and failure. Each experience taught her something new: the importance of timing, the value of patience, and the power of observation. She knew that the galaxy was vast, and the challenges she faced at the Academy were only a fraction of what awaited beyond. One evening, after a particularly grueling team exercise, Lyra sat alone in the observation lounge. She watched the stars through the massive windows of the orbital station, feeling a quiet sense of determination. The galaxy was full of unknowns, and humans were still often underestimated. But she understood that potential could not be ignored. Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Kalen, a fellow human cadet who had become one of her closest allies. "Lyra," he said, sitting beside her, "do you ever worry that we'll be outmatched? That humans can only go so far?" Lyra shook her head. "Strength is not just in the body," she said. "It's in the mind, in creativity, in how you respond to challenges. Humans have survived and thrived because we adapt. That is our advantage." Kalen considered her words, nodding slowly. "I want to learn from you. I want to be able to do what you do." "You can," Lyra replied, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It takes practice, patience, and belief in yourself. Never let anyone else's doubt define your limits." As the station rotated slowly around its star, Lyra felt a sense of purpose settle over her. The Academy had begun to recognize her talent, but she knew that the path ahead would be filled with even greater challenges. Aliens would continue to test her, simulations would grow more complex, and the galaxy itself was unpredictable. Yet Lyra welcomed the future. She had learned that every obstacle was an opportunity, every doubt a chance to prove what humans were capable of. With each success, she strengthened not only herself, but the potential of all human cadets at the Academy. In the weeks that followed, Lyra continued to excel. She faced opponents of increasing skill and strength, yet her adaptability and precision allowed her to succeed where others might fail. Her reputation grew, not as a mere human cadet, but as a symbol of what humans could achieve when they combined intelligence, courage, and determination. Torek, once a skeptic, began to approach her with a new respect. During training sessions, he tested her skill, pushing her to adapt and improvise. Their rivalry became a form of mutual growth, each learning from the other. The other alien cadets, while still cautious, started to see humans in a new light, recognizing that underestimated beings could have unexpected advantages. Lyra's influence also inspired a culture shift within the human cadets. Where they had once relied on technology or brute force, they now focused on observation, strategy, and adaptability. The academy began to take note, and instructors started to incorporate human-style training principles into broader programs. Through every challenge, Lyra remained focused on her own growth. She understood that success was not about proving superiority over others but about mastering oneself. Every strike, every maneuver, every decision was a step toward becoming stronger, sharper, and more capable. And through it all, Lyra Vance understood the truth that would guide her for the rest of her journey. Humans were not defined by their size or raw strength, but by their ingenuity, their adaptability, and their relentless determination to rise to any challenge. The Academy announced a special tournament, weeks after Lyra's successive victories. This event was unlike any other. It would combine individual skill, strategy, and teamwork, testing every cadet's ability to think, adapt, and fight. The tournament was held in the largest arena in the station, a colossal space with shifting platforms, obstacles, and multi-environment simulations. Spectators, both cadets and instructors, filled the observation decks, eager to witness the pinnacle of training at the academy. Lyra stood at the entrance of the arena, her fists clenched and her stance steady. She had faced dummies, simulations, and hybrid creatures. But this tournament would be different. Here, every cadet would compete, every species would test its limits, and the stakes were higher than ever. The whispers in the crowd followed her. Humans, they said, would never dominate in raw competition. Some doubted she could even survive the first round. She focused on her own preparation. Her mind replayed every lesson, every strike, every maneuver she had mastered over years of training. The human advantage was not just strength or speed. It was adaptability. She understood that every opponent would try to predict her moves, but she also knew that humans could act in ways no one expected. The first round was an obstacle-heavy challenge with a variety of mechanical and organic adversaries. Lyra moved swiftly, dodging swinging obstacles and disabling attacking drones with precise strikes. Her movements were fluid, efficient, and calculated, leaving little room for error. Cadets from other species observed her silently, some with respect, others with disbelief, as she navigated obstacles that had previously eliminated many competitors. When the second round began, Lyra faced Torek, the four-armed alien who had become both her rival and a source of learning. Torek approached her with confidence, muscles rippling, ready to overpower her with brute force. But Lyra was ready. She studied his movements, noting patterns, anticipating timing, and calculating leverage. As they engaged, Torek struck with tremendous force, each blow designed to test her endurance. Lyra dodged, pivoted, and countered with precise strikes aimed at weak points she had observed in his movements. She used his strength against him, redirecting momentum and avoiding exhaustion. The crowd watched in amazement as Lyra, smaller in size, managed to match and surpass the larger alien in skill and strategy. By the end of the round, Lyra emerged victorious. Torek, breathing heavily, gave a nod of respect, acknowledging her ability to adapt and overcome. The other cadets began to understand that her success was no fluke. Humans had the potential to excel, not by brute strength, but by intelligence, creativity, and resilience. The semi-final round introduced multiple opponents simultaneously, testing how cadets could handle unpredictability and pressure. Lyra faced a combination of fast-moving mechanical drones and agile alien cadets. She moved quickly, striking with precision and using her environment cleverly. She pushed obstacles to trap drones, redirected attackers into each other, and stayed one step ahead of her human and alien opponents. Throughout the tournament, Lyra's strategy became clear. Patience, observation, and adaptability. She did not rely on raw power, but on reading the battlefield, anticipating movements, and making every action count. Her efficiency, speed, and creativity allowed her to navigate challenges that would have overwhelmed many other cadets. By the time the final round arrived, the arena had transformed into a simulated asteroid field, complete with low-gravity zones, narrow platforms, and environmental hazards designed to test every skill the cadets had learned. Her opponent in the final round was the top-ranking alien cadet, a towering figure with natural strength and agility far surpassing most others. The crowd held its breath, expecting a straightforward victory for the alien. Lyra studied her opponent carefully. She noted the slight delay in their movements when changing direction in low gravity, the way they relied heavily on reach and power, and the rhythm of their attacks. She knew she could not match raw strength, but she could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast. The match began with both cadets moving cautiously, testing the limits of the arena. Her opponent lunged, striking with overwhelming force, but Lyra sidestepped, countering with precise blows aimed at joints and weak points. She moved fluidly across the platforms, jumping and spinning to maintain balance in low gravity, keeping her opponent off guard. As the battle progressed, Lyra utilized every advantage her human training offered. She observed patterns in her opponent's attacks, creating openings that allowed her to gain control. Using momentum and leverage, she redirected strikes, maneuvered around hazards, and avoided taking unnecessary risks. The audience watched in awe, unable to predict who would emerge victorious. Minutes passed like hours, and the intensity only increased. Lyra's focus never wavered. Her strategy remained steady. She exploited every opportunity, using agility and intelligence to neutralize her opponent's strength. Finally, in a moment of perfect timing, she delivered a precise strike that disrupted her opponent's balance, allowing her to gain control and complete the final move that secured her victory. The arena fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted into applause. Cadets cheered, instructors nodded in approval, and even the skeptical aliens gave acknowledgments of respect. Lyra had not only won the tournament but had done so in a way that demonstrated the full potential of human skill, strategy, and resilience. The silver-skinned instructor approached, their expression unreadable, but filled with a weight of recognition. "Cadet Vance," they said, "your performance has redefined what we believed possible. Humans are often underestimated, but you have shown that intelligence, adaptability, and precision are as powerful as any natural advantage. Your victory is well earned." Lyra nodded, acknowledging the praise without arrogance. "Thank you," she said simply. "I train to improve, not to prove." The results follow naturally. As the tournament concluded, Lyra's influence on the academy became more apparent. Other human cadets, inspired by her example, trained with renewed determination, applying observation, strategy, and adaptability in every exercise. Alien cadets who had doubted them began to respect their abilities and consider humans as valuable contributors rather than weaklings. Lyra herself reflected on the journey. From the moment she had snapped the test dummy in two, she had faced doubt, skepticism, and intense challenges. Every simulation, every opponent, every obstacle had taught her something new. She realized that true strength was not simply in the body or in natural abilities, but in the mind, in creativity, and in the courage to face challenges without fear. Her final match had been more than a test of skill. It had been a statement. Humans, she realized, were capable of more than many believed. Underestimation was a weakness in her opponent's thinking, and it was something humans could turn into an advantage. That evening, as the academy settled into quiet after the tournament, Lyra walked along the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers and opportunities. Humans were a small part of it, often underestimated, but Lyra knew that potential mattered more than perception. Kalen, her fellow cadet, joined her. "You did it," he said quietly. "You proved what humans can do." Lyra smiled faintly. "It wasn't just me," she said. "Every human cadet here has potential. We just need the chance to show it." Kaelin nodded, inspired by her words. "I want to keep learning, to keep improving. I want to be able to face challenges like you do." "You will," Lyra said. "It takes practice, observation, and the courage to act. Strength alone is not enough. Intelligence and adaptability are just as important." As the orbital station rotated slowly around a distant star, Lyra felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had faced doubt, skepticism, and overwhelming challenges, and she had risen above them all. Her victories were not just her own. They were proof of what humans could achieve when they combined determination, skill, and ingenuity. The Academy would remember her name, not only as a cadet who had broken expectations but as a symbol of human potential. Instructors would consider new training methods, cadets would aspire to reach her level, and the perception of humans across the Academy would forever be altered. Lyra understood that her journey was only beginning. The galaxy was vast, and countless challenges awaited beyond the Academy's walls. But she also knew that humans, underestimated though they might be, could face any challenge and adapt to any situation. The strength of the mind, the power of adaptability, and the courage to act were qualities that no species could take away. And standing tall in the observation deck, looking out at the stars, Lyra Vance felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had not only proven herself, but had also opened a door for humanity to be seen differently. A species capable of greatness, ingenuity, and resilience beyond expectations. Her hands clenched in a silent promise. The galaxy would remember the human who refused to be underestimated, the cadet who broke dummies, overcame doubt, and stood as a testament to the true potential of her species. Lyra Vance turned from the observation deck and walked back to her quarters, ready to face whatever the future held. Confident that humans could rise to any challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed. The Academy had doubted her, the cadets had doubted her, and the galaxy might have doubted humans as a whole. But Lyra had shown that determination, intelligence, and courage could break every expectation, reshape every assumption, and inspire an entire species to believe in itself.